Thank you very much, Barry. Thank you. Thank you very much. Barry, thank you very much. I should bring you with me everywhere to do that introduction. That was excellent. I appreciate it. It's great to see you all here. I heard the last panel talking about the discussions that are going on in Northern Virginia. I apologize for walking in the middle of that panel. I was racing, not speeding, racing from Northern Virginia to get here on time, and I'm glad that I was able to make it to be here with you. We have a great panel here. You're not going to hear a lot from me. I'm going to try to keep the conversation going along. We'll get our panel going right away. I'm going to start with some introductions. Dr. Steve Staples down on my far left, your right, is the superintendent of public instruction. All of us know who Steve Staples is. I could give a long introduction here, but I will tell you he is one of the most talented people we have in education in the Commonwealth, and it's a pleasure to have him as our superintendent. So let's give Steve a warm welcome. Pam on my immediate left here is the superintendent of Martinsville City Schools. I love this introduction because Pam actually was trained as a journalist originally and has left the private sector to go into education. More importantly, she's one of the first classroom teachers in Virginia and in the United States to earn national board certification. And I think that's great, Pam, that you're going to join us here on this panel. She went to work at a division level administrator and then at the state level as curriculum and instruction specialist for the Virginia Department of Education's Governor's Best Practice Centers. So please welcome Pam with us. Thank you. I've been practicing this last name all morning to make sure that I get it. I'm probably going to mess it up when I do it out loud here. But Pat Konopnicki, is that close, right, Pat? Is that good? Right yep. Right all right, we're going to go with that. You guys just say that that's what it was. Pat has been the Director of Technical and Career Education in Virginia Beach Public Schools since 1992. He is a former classroom teacher, principal, and professor at GW University. Pat has served as on the Governor's Council for School Business Partnerships and the Governor's Task Force for the Construction Industry. His latest passions include, and I love these, STEM and robotics, cybersecurity, CTE certifications, and workplace readiness. A perfect panelist for our discussion today. Pat, welcome. Thank you. And Jared Cotton, certainly last but not least, superintendent of Henry County Schools. Jared currently serves as the superintendent of Henry County Public Schools in Virginia. Prior to his current position, he serves as Associate Superintendent for Department of Educational Leadership and Assessment for Virginia Beach. He also served as Director of Assessment and Accountability, Principal for a Title I elementary school, Assistant Principal at a middle and elementary school, and has been an Instructional Technology Specialist. Jared, great to have you with us today. Thank you very much. As you see, we've got a great panel here, and as my job as the moderator is to ask a couple questions, keep the dialogue going, and so we're going to jump right into the first question. So panelists, buckle in. We've got a great conversation coming. First question, what do you think can be done to connect the dots between the education that our students are getting at the high school level and the career pathway that ultimately waits for them after? So how do we connect those dots between the education we're providing them and the pathway that the career will offer them, whether that pathway goes through college or not, maybe goes right to the job right away after high school. So what can we do to connect those dots between high school and the job?
I'll jump in there.
Great.
I think that somewhere along the last 30 years, the world of high school and the world of work have become seriously misaligned. And that has just become more and more skewed. The economy went global, and schools, for the most part, still operate on an agricultural calendar, and we have an industrial age model, assembly line, where we move students through the grades. And we've really reached a critical juncture, and we have got to get our trajectories back in sync. No one knows this more than Martinsville, and in our community, Martinsville, Henry County, we lost over 11,000 jobs in the decade prior to the recession. Over 9,000 of those were in manufacturing. One of the things that we sat down in Martinsville one day, we just said, we're working so hard, we're not getting anywhere. What's going on? And we just had to stop and say, who is our customer? And I think that, educators tend to say the customer is the student. And we said, who's paying our bills? the taxpayers. How do we get the tax money? And it comes down to the community and business and industry. It's the economy that makes communities thrive. And so we really had a paradigm shift where we are looking at business and industry are our customer, and they serve. Our work is to serve and prepare a workforce that will help them, that will in turn help our community and help our individual students. So I think we have to break down the walls of the schools, and I refer to it as a push-in and a pull-out approach. We've got to get kids out of the schools and into the real world of business to learn the culture of work, to learn about the opportunities that are available to them, to experience something real, tangible, visible, that then they can take back and start using to build their dreams. Because kids in areas like ours don't know what's out there or what possibilities are there. We've got to get teachers out of the classroom. If you have done nothing but ever go to school, prepare to teach school, and teach school, it becomes very, very hard to realistically prepare students for a workforce in a global economy. Teaching is a very isolating profession because you're in a classroom all day, every day with kids, and you can become very isolated. School used to be a place where you came to get the knowledge because that's the only place you can get it. Now, anything I want to know is in my smartphone and everyone has it. Knowledge is cheap. School is now the place where you go to learn how to use the knowledge, how to manipulate it, how to think about it. And that is a huge paradigm shift for schools that they are really struggling with. We've also got to get members of the business and industry community into the schools in an authentically engaged way. Come in and help us figure out how do we repurpose our space from rows of desks to collaborative learning environments. We've been spending years, you want people to work on teams, and we've spent years and years telling students to sit still, be quiet, shh, don't talk. But yet you need teamwork who can work positively. Upgrading your software equipment, how can we use that as a training wheel model in our schools to help begin some of those baby steps that will help you meet your needs? Critical thinkers help us design authentic projects that will solve real problems that you might have in your place so that our students can apply what they've learned. And then come and critique us and tell us what we can do right now to change our methods in order to better serve your needs. So we've got to connect those groups. It's messy, but I think until we do that, we'll see trends emerge, and then from there you go on to diagnosing, what changes do we need in practice, structure, laws, funding, so forth.
In the same spirit, others that would like to comment, there are obviously some impediments to connecting those dots, and as we think about the things that Pam just said, what are some other thoughts on connecting those dots? Pat?
I could go, as I frame the answer to this question, let me tell you. We haven't put all of our money in the STEM basket, but we know that that's a critical national, state, and local priority. You heard that today from the speakers ahead of us. You've also heard, it came to us in an article that we read from the Brookings Institution called The Hidden STEM Economy. And Jonathan Rothwell wrote a really magnificent piece when he talked about it's not only the baccalaureate job-related STEM jobs, it's the sub-baccalaureate. And those are certified workers that can fulfill many of the jobs that we've pointed to today, or industry-certified workers that can do that. And then there was another report that came out just this month from the Council of City Governments. It said Virginia is one of the top 6 STEM states with a friendly STEM market. And Virginia is number 3. And we're 0.2 of a point behind Washington, the state of Washington, so that's a pretty good place to be. And then another report came out in September of the 100 most unlikely cities to impact to drive the national economy. Virginia Beach is one of those. We were 53rd. Guess who was 45th? Does anybody know? Richmond. So hooray for the Richmond people.
Good.
That we know that STEM is all around us. Virginia is a breadbasket, so what are we doing? And that was a Bloomberg article that came out as well. And so how do we do that? Well, locally, we align ourselves with economic development in our city. As probably the biggest recipient of the city dollars is in the school system, we have to pay attention to where the city wants to go. So we've aligned ourselves with their strategic plan. I happen to sit on the economic vitality team for the city. They sit on my general advisory council. It's a symbiotic relationship where we target the industries where they want to go. And I'll tell you, STEM is in their strategic plan. Secondly, it's entrepreneurship and innovation, which we just heard earlier from Secretary Jones. And then thirdly, we want to be in the cybersecurity space. So everything you've heard today, we've got our arrows pointed in that direction. And the last thing that I will say is a way of implementing that is we have what we call a STEM trifecta challenge, and that's STEM robotics. It's a 3D makerspace challenge where students have to understand the entrepreneurial process. And then thirdly, it's a cybersecurity challenge. And what makes this interesting is that this is K-12. So we've got 35 of our 52 elementary schools involved in one of these three projects and challenges. We've got middle schools, high schools, and centers involved as well. And it's quite an exciting experience, and we'll have several thousand people at our convention center June 3rd. I invite the entire room to come to beautiful Virginia Beach and watch STEM in action.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Jared?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I would have shared has already been touched on a little bit, other than you really have to change what your goals are and what your outcomes are. And we started meeting in our community, and Pam and I have the pleasure of working in the same community, so we do collaborate on different projects. And we brought our business leaders together, post-secondary education, economic development, and we started having conversations about what our graduates need to be successful. And that really changed the conversation, because if you're really measuring what you value, then we have to change not only what we assess, but how we assess, but also how we deliver instruction. And we really looked at, for example, the National Career Readiness Assessment in our community, which I'm excited to say that all of our seniors in Henry County will be taking that assessment this year. We also looked at the Virginia Placement Test through the community college, and all of our 10th graders take that assessment as well. So we started sending the message that we need to start measuring what we truly value, and then we need to point all those arrows toward that, toward those goals. We also looked at other types of assessments like the College Work Readiness Assessment, which we're using in Henry County, but we also realized that our high schools have to change. The way that they look, high school is not a 4-year sentence where you get out for good behavior, and we want our students to be excited and engaged in learning. So we launched the first New Tech Network high school program in Virginia, which we're really excited about, Warrior Tech. We have within Magna Vista High School, and it's all about project-based learning, integrated courses. As Pam talked about, the model of doing a little bit of math and going over to science and departmentalizing, the integrated courses are weaving all of those together. So students are involved in world history and English together through classical connections. They're involved in biology and health and PE taught together, where they are learning natural connections across the curriculum, and they're involved in service projects relevant within our community, because what we've heard from our business leaders is our students need skills to be successful, and the 4 C's, creative thinking, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. Of course, the business leaders gave us a longer list, which was probably 300 skills, but we pared it down to 4, and that's what we're working on in Henry County, and that's been powerful because they said if you graduate students with these skills, we'll interview them and we'll hire them. So that's been such a powerful collaboration.
Great, Jared. Steve, your
Thanks.
thoughts?
I really think I wanted these 3 people to speak first
Yeah.
because they're doing the hard work. But what you heard each one of them say was that they're finding a way to fundamentally change the way school operates in order to make that connection. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the piece we really have to focus on. I'm not sure our high schools were built to do what we're asking them to do in this question. when I listened to the panel before us, and I thought the next time we do that panel, we need to mix this up. We need some of them with us and some of us with them,
Yeah.
so we can have that conversation. But when they were listing the skills they wanted to hire, academic skills weren't even on the list. Now, they're assumed, they're important, we're not ignoring them, but right now our schools are so focused on the academic arena alone that we really don't think of that broader skill set base. So I think it's important that we do that. And then real quickly, the other area we have to look at is traditionally we think of exposing children to careers as something that's fairly easily done, but there are careers blooming so quickly that we don't even know what's out there. One of the data points that's frightening is that for many of our students, they fall into careers governed by what their parents do. Many of the careers that we've talked about on this stage today didn't exist for their parents. So I think as schools, we've got to think fundamentally about our role in exposing students to careers that they could consider beyond just what their parents are doing.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And when we think about connecting the dots, you obviously hear some great examples of what's being done now to expose our children to what's going to be waiting for them on the outside, right? After the sentence is up and they get their parole, they can go out. I think that's a great way to think about it. When I think about connecting the dots, being that I work in private industry, I can tell you when we hire someone, I never ask the following question: what'd you get on your English SOL? I don't care what you got on your English SOL, right? I care that you graduated and that you can actually think critically and solve a problem. The other thing I think is that when we're connecting dots, there's a framework aspect that I feel like is missing in some regard. So if you bear with me for 1 second, the framework in my mind works like this. You've got the business community that sets out these requirements. You've got an assessment system that can manage whether the children are going to meet those requirements or not. You have a curriculum that supports the educational needs to make the assessment to meet the requirements. And the piece that we don't talk enough about, we have a teacher trained in professional development to deliver the curriculum, to be assessed to meet the requirements. And when we talk about the framework that we need, that's in my mind how you connect all those dots together. Otherwise, we've got really, really great people working really, really hard in little tiny silos around the Commonwealth. And how do we pull it all together to really connect those dots? So let's move on to the second question real quick. Specifically, what are the innovative programs that you see at the local level that you think will be able to scale regionally or even statewide? So what's working in your area that you think we should spend time and energy scaling out to the regional or statewide level?
Well, in Martinsville, we have developed what we call our STEM pipeline, and it's a pre-K-12 initiative. We've heard a lot about starting earlier today. It's pre-K, starting focused on developing skills and interests in the STEM career pathways. It is unique because it begins at the pre-K level, it goes all the way through high school, and it is not a special program for some kids. Every single student has access to this program, not just some of them. And what we were trying to do was to develop a systemic solution to a systemic problem in our area, because our community is hurting. We're actively trying to compete in a global economy, and we know that the businesses will go where there is a highly skilled workforce. And so we understand what our role is, and we take that very seriously. And we say that, our student success can be the economic tipping point for our community. And, we've changed our mission, vision, all that. We are bringing life to learning, and what I mean by that is real life, the real deal. So what we did was we went and we've met with lots of our employers and anyone who will listen to us, and we say, what do you need? And, and the answer is it's not the SOL scores, as Jared alluded to. It's the skill set, but particularly in our area, there's a great opportunity in the area of advanced manufacturing. And so that was one area that we've sort of really tried to focus on to help in that way. We reviewed our community profile. And, in my school division, we have a 78% of our students are free and reduced lunch. Our city ranks 130th out of 134 localities in the percent of residents living in poverty. half the population has a high school diploma or less. And so we have significant resource gaps for the majority of our students in terms of transportation, internet access, hardware, software, and just awareness of STEM career opportunities. Their parents don't know what the opportunities are. And school, starting in pre-K, is the source of these lacking resources, and it occurs within the structure of our calendar. So what we did was we actually started looking at the research because we had started a robotics program, and anecdotally we had some evidence that it was engaging, popular. We started looking at the math research that shows robotics has positive outcomes for students in areas of math. We also looked at the 2006 Chev study that talked about encouraged the implementation of the first robotics team in our area program. And so we went through that, but we started, our pipeline has a lot of pieces to it, engineering, all different strands woven through it, but robotics is the common thread that goes through all of it. And what it has done is it has served as the hook that engages kids. And so we now begin with numeracy, with Legos at pre-K, and then in elementary, it's supposed to be, we call it inspiring them. They become aware. We actually have started robotics competitions in elementary school now, last year, and we'll back that down a couple grades as we move forward. Middle school, we have a NASA lab, one of 16 in the United States, and we use that to continue developing those STEM skills and the robotics, and then on into high school where we engineer the future, and that's where we really partner with the businesses, with the community college, with the New College Institute. So we have students, some of these community college graduates you see or hear about are actually high school students who are earning, we have students enrolled in the community college advanced film manufacturing program and are in the CTE courses. And so that has really changed. And what we have really done is our mindset is that CTE is no longer something out here to the side. Yeah. CTE is the workplace. CTE is the application of the core. And it's the crown jewel. And everything else, what you learn in CTE is how to apply what you've learned in math, science. We have a television production lab that we've beefed up. That's not because everyone's going to go be a television reporter. It's because it teaches communication skills, because you learn how to put together a story in a cohesive sequence. You can speak to a camera, you can present yourself, you can watch yourself critique and speak and articulate clearly. So that's that communications piece that we keep trying to build in there. So it's been very engaging, very popular for our students, and we are starting to see some results of first-generation college students, minority students going on into engineering careers.
Yeah, great. Lots of great stuff going on in Martinsville. Pat, when you think about what you guys are working on, spend a little time thinking about then, if it's successful for you, how can we scale it maybe to a more regional focus or even across the Commonwealth?
That's somewhat easy to answer. Beginning this year, we've taken our traditional marketing program, which I suspect every school division represented in this audience has a marketing type program. We've morphed that into entrepreneurship and innovation at all high schools, our 2 centers that we have. And so students will get the array of marketing where it's important, but they will get a whole array of entrepreneurship skills that we feel is critical. What we've put in every marketing lab is a MakerBot printer, so they will be able to create a 3D product, have to sell it Shark Tank style. We partnered with Junior Achievement, which is probably in most localities. You can tap them to use some of their curriculum as well as some of their business resources to help mentor and then judge your Shark Tank experience. It's literally, other than the 3D printer, it's almost very cost effective. We've partnered with Babson College, which is the #1 entrepreneurship school in the country, according to U.S. News and World Report, right ahead of Harvard. And so we're developing and aligning our local competencies with the best of the best. We've had our teachers trained there. We're going to have more this summer. And starting tonight, I will make a prediction that we have a entrepreneurship and business academy that the community has asked us to put together. Will be voted on. I may miss that vote, but I feel sure that that will be passed, and that is going to serve that as well. We have a governor's school with an entrepreneurship strand. So we're knee deep in what Secretary Jones talked about, and I didn't know he was going to say that, but it's important. And then I think when I talked to the superintendent about this, he said, well, how are we going to certify students in entrepreneurship? And I said, well, according to my research, there's nothing out there in entrepreneurship that I think is worth obtaining. And he said, well, let's create one. And Microsoft is our partner. Let's contact Microsoft. So since last fall, I've been working with them, and by this spring, we hope to pilot a Microsoft-driven certification in entrepreneurship that we will gladly come to the state board and try to get on the calendar to have that state approved. And that will have the essence of what Certiport and Microsoft think entrepreneurs should have, such as the mindset and all of the different curriculum potential. So that's on our radar, huge. And another innovative piece that I would slip back to the answer I was giving you earlier, which was the STEM trifecta. Part of our trifecta is built around robotics. Well, anybody who knows robotics, like the ones out in the lobby, they are not cheap. You can go to certain places, you can try to get an off-the-shelf robot, and it's several $100s. Well, we realized last year with having 60-some schools, K-12, it's getting to be very cost-effective. And I saw a video put out by Microsoft, and it was a little robot running across the floor, and it was called B-15. And B-15 was driven by Raspberry Pi. How many people in here have heard of Raspberry Pi? Not the food, but okay, there's a few hands that are going up. Raspberry Pi comes from Great Britain. It's being sold by the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and it's $30. It's about the size of my name tag, a little bit this thick. I forgot to bring it from my office. I was going to hold it up. So for about $30, you can get a 1 gig computer that has a multiplicity of potential. So we've got our students learning how to code the Raspberry Pi if you're in just regular computer science. If you're going to build a robot, you can order what they call a hat that goes on top of that and do the soldering, and then do the peripheral devices for a Raspberry Pi robot that'll be like the Microsoft one we saw, and it'll have to achieve the competencies we want for our challenge. But we also have moved that over, trying to get our bang for the buck. For cybersecurity for elementary and middle school, it's to create, the challenge will be, create a cyber device or innovation using the Raspberry Pi. So for that a little small amount of money, when you think about it, we're already getting some great achievements so far. We've done some internal research, and these are locally developed products that I will share with anybody in this room that they could do relatively cheaply too, and in some cases save some money. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Jared, things that are working for you that you'd like to share and maybe figure out how we scale?
Well, I think, as I talked about earlier, bringing those groups together, post-secondary education and business leaders, to really talk about how we can change the conversation. We started doing some things in our community where our teachers went to visit these businesses like RTI and Eastman to learn more about advanced manufacturing, what that's all about, because we have a long history of manufacturing in our community, but advanced manufacturing is very different. So once the teachers learned about that and the students started to go visit those businesses leaders came to visit our schools. So that really created that conversation, which led to new tech, what I talked about earlier, And that's our prototype. We're already expanding to our other high school program next fall, and our plan is to expand to both middle schools. And it's project-based learning, relevant experiences where our students get involved with the community. They worked with the Virginia Natural History Museum to develop a website for children in the community. And it was somewhat competitive because they worked in groups where they were selected to actually have their website posted on the museum's website. That's one example. But what I love about it is they work on project teams with a project manager, and you can get fired, which I love, that they can fire each other, which instantly they wanted to fire each other.
You can get parole
early on.
and you can get fired.
You're
That's
right, you
great.
can get fired.
You go to school.
So what I like about that, what that means is if you get fired, then you have to turn over all the work you've completed for your team, and then you have to complete the project by yourself. So real world experiences within the confines here, but I want to also, when you talk about scaling up, you've got to work with your community college system. We have Patrick Henry Community College. We have New College Institute that we've worked with, and you have to start early, as Pam talked about a little bit earlier here, where we have our middle schoolers going over to Patrick Henry Community College to learn more about those opportunities. And what I love is when I see students in schools, they tell me, thank you for sending me to the community college. I know exactly what I want to do with my career. So they're already thinking about that. And we even thought outside the box where we looked at other resources like our governor's school program. We have our governor's school teachers who have time in the afternoon. We said, well, we're going to start sending our middle schoolers over to the governor's school to learn about STEM and participate in those project-based opportunities. The caveat is they have to talk about careers in these fields and how you can pursue a career in STEM. So what I would say as far as scaling up is you've got to work on those partnerships, and I believe it has to happen at the local level, because for us, advanced manufacturing, information technology, and healthcare are the three largest areas of need. We have jobs available. We don't have people who can fill those jobs. So we've been focusing at the local level, regional level, which I heard earlier, to meet that need.
Steve, you're in a unique spot when you get to see what's happening across the Commonwealth, but you also get the opportunity to help the localities scale some of these things. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing out there?
Well, I think we chose these three for the panel because they're innovative, they're entrepreneurial, they're creative, they're thinking out of the box, and I want to just reinforce 2 points that I think popped up. Number one, they're finding ways to assess skills on a broader range. They're looking at performance assessments. Can you actually do something with the robot? Can you actually deal with the robotics competition? They're broadening assessments in a way that allows students to demonstrate proficiency beyond a paper and pencil or even a cursor test. I think that's a lesson for the state as we start thinking about how we want to certify that students are prepared for the next step, the next real life step. And that is, we're going to have to look at using workforce-based assessments, skills assessments, performance-based assessments that allow kids those kinds of experiences. I think the second thing that would reinforce, each of them spoke about how they took school outside of the building. For too many years, schools have been a fortress where folks sent us their kids, we did something with them, and then we sent them back out. And too often when we wanted to engage the community, it was around a fundraiser. Can you give us money? Can you give? We're way past that. And I think what you heard in each of these three was that schools have a relationship with external audiences and external stakeholders in a way that informs what schools are doing. I think at the state level, we've got to find a way not only to encourage that, not only to give it permission, but to motivate it, to reward it, say this is important.
Yeah. Steve, I think those last comments are exactly right. We've got a round of speed questions that we're going to jump into here, and there's one that's not on your list, so get ready, because here it comes. It's exactly what Steve was just talking about. We have a system today, and you know the work we've all done together on trying to reduce the number of SOLs to get rid of those multiple choice questions and that rote memorization that we spend so much time on. And how do we create the system that rewards and motivates that, right? So we heard from every one of them, we want to get outside of the walls. I've got a junior in high school right now, He took personal finance over the summer. He took it virtually. He thought it was the greatest class he's ever taken because he could do it on his own pace downstairs, listening to his headphones, and he could get it done. And he learned more in that class than I think he might have. Well, don't tell his teachers. He learns in school too, but we don't reward any of that, right? We actually say, those are great ideas. Do that on your free time, because what we want you to do are these very rigid things that happen to be part of our system. So speed round here, some thoughts on how we can break down the system a little bit and allow this flexibility and creativity to flourish.
Well, the system is, schools are a governmental entity, and it's very easy to go through the motions of going through school. And we just can't do that anymore. We've got to break that apart. We need some flexibility to do that.
And speak, what kind of flexibility? That would be very
the
helpful.
assessment piece is a piece of that. We've got to shift from this knowledge-based to this skills-based. And again, it goes back to, it's a paradigm shift for schools to do that. One of the big struggles that we have is teachers. We do not have teachers in these areas, and we can't provide you the workforce if we don't have the teachers. If you can start out at $39,000 a year as a math teacher and go into the private sector at 6 figures, which will you choose? Because we talked about that 25% of people that you're trying to hire from, we're trying to hire from them too. Don't hire our teachers, okay? But there's some things that we need to do to partner maybe in looking at that. We've got to do some differentiated pay because it really is supply and demand. Pay for performance, incentives, I'm all for that. The devil is in the details of figuring out how to make that valid.
Let's get some other thoughts because we're in our speed round.
I'm sorry.
Speed round.
Yeah, speed round. I'm going
Sorry.
to keep you going. No, you're good, Pam.
Okay.
No fun. Pat, yep.
I think industry credentialing is critical.
Okay.
That is a skill-based, high-stakes test, third-party, proctored. We put them in rooms where the teachers can't even be there. And I think the more that we can advocate stackable credentials, where you have maybe at the bottom what we call our pyramid is workplace readiness. Secondly would be the Microsoft certifications, which you can get online now in addition to being in a business information class. And then thirdly, your content certification. So if you're in auto mechanics, get an ASE. If you're in welding, get the ASW. Get the Cisco certification, whatever. We live in a paper-oriented society. They don't ask what the SOL grade is, but business asks, what do you bring to the table? And if they can tell you that they're MOS certified in several different areas, they can do Excel spreadsheets, et cetera, that's a unique thing they can have. And one other thing that I think we could do, and maybe consider the concept of industry credentialing that carries college credit weight. And that's being done in other states. It's being done in Florida, where you can take a certain Microsoft test or a Cisco test, or they've got a 9-page list, and it equates to 3 college credits. So I think that's something that we could embrace as a state, and that's something to look at.
Great, thank you.
And I appreciate what Pat said about the industry certifications, because our goal has really been college credit and industry certifications prior to graduation, so we've been pushing that. But I would go back to starting with the end in mind. If you want your graduates to come out of high school thinking critically, thinking creatively, problem solving, being good citizens, then you need to work backwards. You need to make sure that your system measures that and supports that, and starting with the end in mind. And if we want to do that at the local level, which we're doing in Henry County, we've completely changed how we deliver our curriculum instruction, our performance tasks, which you've heard Steve talk about, which we built into our curriculum, and that starts right away. And then you prepare them to demonstrate those skills, and that's so important. You've got to put that in place and truly measure what you value, and I'll say that over and over again because I'm fortunate to be on that committee with you.
Yep.
and others at the SOL level, where we're talking about what we value, but we need to continue to work toward measuring that.
Steve?
And take speed round, that's exactly, I think Jared's comment is right. If we're asking schools to bring us different outcomes, we've got to hold schools accountable in a different way. not about not holding schools accountable, but holding them accountable for a new product. Here's a simple example. Last year, Virginia schools helped students earn 103,000 career credentials. 103,000. Externally certified, validated, just like any workforce would have them. They counted 0 for the school's accreditation.
Yeah.
The school that gave the most credentials was no different than the school that gave the least. We need to say to schools, this is important enough for us to hold you accountable for,
Yep.
and believe me, they'll start doing it.
And in our last 55 seconds here, does that translate down into the student's achievement at the diploma level?
Absolutely.
Right?
It
Has
does.
to, right? Has to come all the way
The
down.
state
to
board
that.
has already had great discussions around the notion of moving away from a diploma as an accumulation of credits and looking at a diploma as a collection of competencies.
Yeah.
Really interesting discussion.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about the ending of our panel here. Something that Pam said that stuck with me, a lot of great comments here, and we'll applaud them here in just a second. But there was another speed round question that talked about the stigma of CTE and how do we think about that. And Pam said something that I think was very important is CTE is the workforce, right? So maybe, Steve, we can talk about calling it something else. Whether or not it's right or wrong, call it the cool kids do it or something good. So we can definitely think through that because I think that is the secret and that's where we are. Please, a big round of applause for our panelists.
Nice job. Thank you.